The chilling breeze carries with it whispers of untold stories at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Do you hear them? The thin murmur threading through brick and ivy, a breath that knows your name before you speak. A century ago, the hill wore trees and the kinds of silence that belonged to farm roads. Then men marked the ground and cut trenches, and the first timbers rose.
Hammers found a rhythm. Dust settled on tongues and eyebrows. By 1910, a modest wooden hospital watched the valley, waiting for patients who coughed into handkerchiefs patterned with roses. The disease had another name then, polite and misleading: consumption, the white plague, yet it sounded sweeter than the rasp in a child's throat. Beds filled with teachers, miners, seamstresses, infants cradled by trembling mothers. Every porch was fitted with rows of chairs, each with a blanket and a cup, the patients arranged like weathered statues facing the sun. Nurses turned them toward daylight as if they were sunflowers. Doctors cracked windows even in January to let the air move, and it moved like a blade. Growth came with the epidemic. Wood surrendered to brick and steel, and in 1926 the castle took its final shape. Arched windows, endless corridors, open-air solariums squared like ship decks above a sea of trees. Inside, antiseptic stung nostrils. Bleach rode the muggy air. The metallic bite of instruments lingered on breath. Fluoroscopes glowed. Needles walked into flesh. Lungs were collapsed on purpose, ribs cut and folded, balloons inflated beneath bone to take pressure off diseased tissue. The surgeon's saw made a sound no one forgot. Nurses noted temperatures in neat loops and slanted lines, wrote prayers into margins disguised as abbreviations. Numbers swelled. Numbers thinned. They wrapped bodies in sheets still warm and slid them out of rooms that still smelled like broth. Disinfectant flooded after, the sharp scent climbing the throat. A priest took off his hat. Windows caught the last color of evening and returned it as a cold glaze. Year by year the tally grew heavier, whispered from one ward to another, not by staff, but by the building itself. The sanatorium learned every name, even the ones whose letters were smudged on admission forms, and kept them. Stories coil around Mary Lee like thread around a bobbin. She arrives on a hot August afternoon, the cicadas pulsing like a pulse against the hill. Her shoes strike the tiles with a brisk tap, and her uniform is crisp, the starch still biting her wrists. She pins her hair. She covers her mouth with a mask and steps into a ward where coughs bloom in counterpoint with the squeak of the medicine cart. Her hands are deft. She washes them until the skin feels carved. Needles find veins, spoons find lips. She learns which breath is days from failing by the way it leaves a chest as if dodging harm. Night after night, when she checks the lanterns, outside the solarium, glass panes haloed with frost in winter, moths smudging the light in summer. She writes in tidy script and tucks sugar into tea for those who cannot swallow bitterness. Rumor adds its own pages. A wedding band glints in a pocket, then vanishes. A letter arrives that doesn't smell like home. She steps onto the fifth-floor balcony where wind is louder, where the city lights look like coins scattered on velvet. Floors below hum like a hive. Gurney wheels roll. A whistle blows for shift change. Somewhere a radio bleats a cheerful song like a dare. It's said she walks to the door marked with numbers that visitors lean toward as if listening through wood. The hallway holds its breath. What happens next is a door that swings with a sound that doesn't belong to hinges. Rope fiber prickling under tension. A chair pushed back so gently that it barely sighs against the tile. Morning finds a shape motionless and falling light, and the shadow she leaves behind stains the ceiling forever, although no one can point to it. After the fifth floor forgets how to sleep. Footsteps scrape where no souls should be. Elevator bells chime once and don't open. Pill bottles rattle inside locked cabinets. Some nights a nurse in a pressed uniform moves past a window and isn't there the next blink. Mary's name becomes a hush, a warning, a plea, depending on who speaks it. Tour guides trace the same path her rounds might have followed. They pause where she could have paused, by a door that likes to swing when the air is still. People standing in that hallway touch their throats without knowing, as if something rests there like a hand. Light from flashlights swims on paint that flakes like winter skin. If you raise your eyes toward the ceiling and you whisper any name at all, the draft tastes like breath returning an answer. Down a sloping corridor that vanishes into earth, the tunnel waits. It opens like a mouth and smells like damp stone and coin. Concrete walls sweat, and a thing trickle searches the center, mapping its own slow geography. When the hospital burgeoned and the White Plague ate through families, hearses and wagons would line the roads, and morale grew shallow. So the tunnel became a quieter road. Supplies rolled down in carts on rails. Milk, linens, gauze, bones. Bodies went the other direction, wrapped in canvas. Faces covered, so the living upstairs could cling to the lie of improvement. Toward smell, lime was sprinkled. To stop rumors, doctors spoke in firm voices about fresh air and science, while night crews did what night crews do: carry, push, pray. The gradient wears on legs. Boots scuff. Echoes fold on echoes like ravens layering wing over wing. If you stand at the top and whisper to someone far below, the words travel as if disassembled and rebuilt, syllables mislaid, vowels stretched until they're rope. During the worst months, the procession never paused. A stretcher would vanish into a cart, wheels groaning, and the attendant would count aloud, not to mark people, but to time his steps. Numbers slip easily into stone and lodge there. War ended. Antibiotics arrived. The balconies emptied. By the time doors finally shut, teenagers had learned to pry them open, to chase dares, to scrawl names like flags on chipped walls. Candles shivered and blew out in the middle of sweating August. Something breathed in the dark where nothing warm lived. Reports clot the air. A low voice calls a name that no one is carrying. Something metallic clanks against the rail when hands brush nowhere. Marble chips tumble from ledges when the air is steady. Temperature drops in pockets, neat as rooms inside the larger space, so sudden that you taste your teeth. Photographs catch a shape loping upright beside people who swear they were alone. A flashlight beam pinwheels as if gripped and turned by someone impatient. Dogs taken inside bristle and whine and plant their feet, and their owners find special new words to explain why leaving is sensible. Investigators march in with cases like priests. Recorders hiss and then spit a syllable not spoken in any throat you know. The tunnel keeps doing the one thing it was made to do: carry what is heavy and what no one wants to carry in daylight. Twilight slows the building's pulse. Windows bruise purple. Tree lines turn to teeth. By 9, the old sanatorium sounds like a body sleeping badly. A long exhale through broken panes. A rattle in vents. A cough of timbers shifting as the temperature falls. Your shoes tick along the corridor and then muffle as dust drinks each step. Paint curls into scrolls under your fingers, and the iron handrail chills the palm as if snow were pressed there. The cafeteria holds the smell of scorched coffee that hasn't been brewed in decades. The surgical theater is a bowl with a cold heart. The floor still reflects a skewed face and the silver spine of a light fixture that won't work no matter how often the switch is flipped. Outside, the hill swallows the last sound of traffic. Inside, every creak is personal. Maps are useless here. You learn by heat and draught. On the children's ward, a ball sits where it should not, scuffed leather slightly tacky in the damp air. It rolls when you breathe, or when something else does. The solarium carries the scent of wet leaves blown in through gapped glass. A moth taps a light bulb that died before mid-century. Far away, a door slams in a way that doesn't stir dust, as if the movement happened sideways from time. People standing shoulder to shoulder feel space make room between them, a seam opening. Cameras misfire. Batteries sluice power into absence. In the stairwell, rooms are flash frozen in the moment of abandonment. Clipboards, a dime caught in a crack, a single glass jar with a white residue like frost at its bottom. You lean, and something leans back across years. Midnight makes a new country. A train mourns in the valley, and something up here answers, one thick strike against a pipe from far down a corridor. Another from within a wall, the rhythm too even to be accident. Along the fifth-floor hall, the air shifts. Hairs stand as if stroked. One window breathes out, cloth flutters, and a figure steps into a frame that wasn't empty, that must be empty, and it's just a moment, just a black width as flat as ink poured onto the world. Your name is spoken aloud, returns thinner. A shoe print appears where the floor is dry enough to hold it, pointing toward the stairs you came up. When one pauses, the building adopts your lungs. It holds your breath. A studio light would be a sin here. Shadows do the work, set moods, frame stories with a hand older than film. You can choose to chase answers through every room and every rumor, trace every line of paint like a map to mercy. Or accept that some places collect more than dust, and the living learn not to take that home. Morning will come. Light will flatten everything. Names will quiet for a while. Yet the hill will keep its weather, and the door with the numbers will weigh on its hinges.
If you visit, keep your questions soft and your footsteps softer. The breeze that greeted you carries more than leaves. It carries habits. And if something in this building decides you resemble a promise once made on a long night, do not answer when it speaks from the dark.